those who were persecuting us actually physically attempted the takeover of our property.
The current base leader called me up into the apartment and said, "Brett, something's going down. Where are you?"
They busted the doors down, and they threw me to the ground.
What puzzled me a little bit is like the lack of honest inquiry.
They pulled up in their car, got out, and they waved to us, and went in their trunk, pulled out a shotgun, and cocked it in front of us.
And we're befuddled. These are people we used to respect.
The end result of all this opposition was, don't get too excited about God.
Yep.
Please tell us again the story of our community.
All right, well, welcome to another History Night, everybody. Last year we talked about our revival and what that all entailed and everything, and I thought this year we'd talk about the siege. So last year we talked about the how the revival broke out and how just all the Finney material and what caused us to start be the group that we are today, to join into Common Purse, and the changes in the way we saw our ecclesiology and how we're meant to live together as Christians and all of that. And there's a lot to cover there, but and we talked about it a little bit last year, but at the end of that had some very real consequences often, to actually follow Christ means something. There's real, actual things that happen, and oftentimes there's pushback. And in the Bible, Christ says, no one who puts their hand to the plow and then looks back is worthy. And there's certainly a lot of temptation where you put your hand to the plow, and then there's a lot of temptation to look back very shortly thereafter, and that period of time is what we call the siege. Mm-hmm. I was just looking up the term "the siege" is something that I've heard so often growing up here, because that's just what we called it. But I thought it's interesting to actually read what the definition of a siege means from the dictionary. So the dictionary says that a siege is the act or process of surrounding and attacking a fortified place in such a way as to isolate it from help and supplies, for the purpose of lessening the resistance of the defenders and thereby making capture possible. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a pretty extreme definition. Does that fit this period that what we call the siege? I think you'll find that as we talk about it, it definitely does. And there's a reason that we've ended up calling it that. But I just want to talk about first, like in broad terms, what is this thing that we call the siege? What was it? Like roughly what time are we talking about? Like just a high level overview before we go in. But what is that?
Well, I'll start off. First off, the Bible says that all those who live a godly life in Christ Jesus shall suffer persecution. And that's exactly what happened, is that after revival, we took these steps of wanting to know God fully, to love God with our total heart, soul, mind, and strength, to make a total commitment to Christ, His people, and His work. And that, in general, in life, when Christians or when people make these fresh commitment to God, there is pushback, there is persecution. Mm-hmm. And what we call the siege is the time of persecution that came about after the revival. Yeah. And we call it a siege because those who were persecuting us actually physically attempted the takeover of our property. Yeah. And encircled us, like you said in your definition, and
Try to isolate you?
Try to isolate us and weaken the group to the point where they could dominate and take over. And so that took place probably, I'm going to say, about 6 months after the revival. And so the actual day we memorialize it as is October 3rd, 1989.
Yeah, the October 3rd was the day of that long meeting right here on the property. It lasted all day, and Adam and I were over here. We weren't invited to the meeting. We should have been in there, but that's when the ultimatum was given to cut ties with the ministry in Valley Forge, and not long after that, definite physical steps were taken. You know, when we were off the property praying about what to do with this ultimatum, people were brought in from all over. I'm going to say the world, because there were some people international.
Oh, it absolutely was the world.
Yeah,
no doubt about it.
None of them had New Jersey license plates on their cars, and then also corporately and legally steps were taken to wrest control from the local board and us here, and then eventually they filed a restraining order on us to try to get us out using legal means. And there was a number of other things too. We were all supported at that time. We had raised our own support. We were missionaries. They called my parents. They called churches and supporters in our group, and and what do you want to call it, a smear campaign, or I forget the legal term, but these guys are off, cut off their money, and so relationships that have been sustaining us were cut off, and then news leaks to the radio. I forget, a couple magazines too. Was it Charisma? There was an article. So every method that could be known to surround and isolate us was taken.
Yeah. The reason Butch and I were not invited to the meeting was, of course, just to kind of rewind, the center here in Hamilton, we had been here for many, many years, and then we were commissioned to go and launch a satellite ministry in Atlantic City. So our primary concern was Atlantic City. Although when the revival happened, it happened everywhere. It happened here, it happened in Atlantic City. It actually spread to several other associated ministries. So the epicenter of that revival was here on the property. And so when there was, a lot of rumblings and a lot of fears and accusations about what this revival was, the mission that we're a part of, is this international mission, and they have a lot of operating locations all around the world. And Hamilton was one of those operating locations, as well as Atlantic City was an operating location. But we were a fraternity, in other words, kind of like a brotherhood. And there was no hierarchical authority structure. There were people responsible for areas around the world, but it was always understood it to be a voluntary association.
And each of these were often called bases, right?
Yeah, each base was autonomous.
They were each were autonomous.
Yeah, and so we collaborated for fellowship, for coordination, and and guidance too. And we received guidance and advice and helping one another and all that. But the mission in general, a place, one of the operating locations, starting to say that some of their leaders had never been Christians, and had then finally found Christ in this revival, was an alarming kind of thing
yes.
to happen, and it was those kind of concerns, and then the C word was used all the time.
Yeah.
You know, you're a cult, Jim Jones, things like that, and so the international mission became very concerned about what was going on here, and that's where this meeting took place,
Yep.
and with the leaders here.
What was the first time that you had a sense that, I mean, I would imagine you were sort of on cloud nine a little bit in that you have in the high of revival, and this is like, oh, this is an amazing thing that's happening and it's exciting. At what point did you have a sense of like, not everybody is excited about this, or there might be problems?
Yeah. I'd say that summer previous to October, friends, in these other locations, were sending negative communications or even concerns. We even had some visit us in Atlantic City, and
They were expressing their
yes.
concerns. These were colleagues or friends of yours from other bases.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we would get correspondence because we were
a network.
We were a network. We were a brotherhood, and we worked together. But every base had the legal and financial last word. That was understood. Every
Yeah.
base was autonomous. But we had this interconnectedness with people just relationally, and so we had a lot of friends throughout the mission, and we would get some friends were attracted. In fact, some actually came to see what was going on, and they themselves became involved in the revival and were excited what was happening. But others were unhappy to hear what was going on, and I think, and this is what revival does, is that when someone starts to confess their sins and starts to say, I'm not following God, and now I am, and it leads people to become convicted, and so it's disrupting, and some of our friends were trying to tell us, and they were saying things like, look, don't tell me I'm not a Christian. I've been suffering and sacrificing for Christ in the mission field for so long. And we weren't saying anything like that. We weren't telling anyone anything like that. We were just saying, hey, this is what God has done in our midst. But then people pick up offense. They take offense by that.
Yeah.
And so we would hear words of that through letters and correspondence. There was really no email to say back
At that
then.
time.
But you were picking up the negative vibes.
Yeah.
And I think Butch himself went to one of these meetings, these collaborative meetings on the East Coast, and he heard some things there.
Yeah, I was sharing a little bit of what was going on. I was actually up there helping this other ministry. It was through Atlantic City. We were able to bring up a lot of bunk beds to them, and was sharing with the leader there, a couple of the leaders there, what was going on. And one of them, I still remember shaking his head. He said, a number of years ago, I took all my Finney books and locked them up in a trunk. And I just think it's unhealthy, that idea. And I was thinking, whoa, I thought they'd be excited. And it was a cold pushback. And we had others visit us in Atlantic City and said exactly what Adam just said, a while back. I remember the conversation was out in the parking lot, I think. I was in the mission for 30 years. But you got to understand, we know these people for that long, a long time. And then when someone that they know who's in leadership stands up and says, I've been in bondage this whole time, or I haven't been a Christian, it's very powerful. And people, take up offense and take it personally. Are you saying that I'm not? Is the question will come a lot of times. No, we're just saying positively, this has been my experience. And the Holy Spirit is applying that, that witness in people's lives.
Yeah, revival is a fresh obedience, a new obedience to Christ. And so for many of us, it was a rededication of our lives, and for some of us, it was the first dedication
Yeah.
of our lives to God, because some of us had never really ever fully given their life to God. They were born into a Christian family, or had gone through the motions and so forth, but they were defeated in sin. They were living in sin. And then when the revival came and people started finding real forgiveness and real freedom in
cleansing,
surrendering and cleansing, surrendering to Christ, that's and they start testifying to it. Everyone starts to say, well, if that person who I admired
Yes.
is saying that they were in
Yeah.
that state, what does it say about me?
Yeah.
And it's just how the Holy Spirit works. Actually, the Holy Spirit works in revival by testimony, really, and it just starts to catch from person to person. And again, it splits people. They either get attracted or they get upset, and they get offended. They take offense. Not unlike the Pharisees did with Jesus or the early apostles.
Yeah.
It's the real religious that really don't like to hear about a new, a fresh obedience. They become ingrained in they're comfortable with their experience, and anything that threatens that is shoot the messenger, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing that was kind of surprised me about this is that my general feeling among evangelicals, which this is a fairly evangelical organization, right? They tend to be very pro-revival. Like that's something that they are often thinking about. And the international mission group that we were associated with seems to be, was a very avant-garde group for the time, a lot of young people. Was a revival not a thing that was talked about very often, or not something that they were like on the radar of? It just seems to me like the default in Christian here is like, if there's a revival, like, wow, that must be, God must be moving, not, wow, that must be a cult immediately, Well,
I mean, revival was our was the thing that we always sought. It was the hoped for experience.
And
it
not,
was
not just you, this base, but like the
entire mission,
a whole,
the
right?
entire organization. Yeah, it was considered the pinnacle of spiritual achievement. Of what you would want. You want revivals. And that's what confused us, because at first when we experienced it, it was like, oh, we read a lot about it. This is actually happening.
It's happening. This is the thing we've been talking
People
about.
are going to love this.
Yeah. Right.
And we didn't know they didn't love it.
No, and in fact, teachers that we've, one I mentioned, Charles Finney, people all over the world had those books, because revival was taught. And then when it's happening, and you get that return on after a testimony, I get rid of all my Finney books. That's that separation Adam was just speaking about, and not everybody wants real revival.
It's not unlike what Finney's revivals that took place in the 19th century, because Finney found that as he preached revival, and there were revivals in these churches in the Second Great Awakening, a lot of preachers were against Finney and against those revivals. In fact, some opposed him with cannons.
There's one that rolled a cannon on the edge of the city and said, "If you come, we're going to shoot you."
Exactly. He drew his enemies, and this is history. I mean, if you just read about the revival throughout history, it splits. It divides, and it's reminiscent of Christ's words. I've come not to bring peace, but a sword. I've come to divide mother against daughter, father against son, and that's what happens. And so naively we thought, hey, our group talks about mission, talks about revival. we're actually seeing some revival happen. This is exciting. This is going to rip through our mission. People are going to love this. This is fantastic. And then we ran up against people who said, this is not fantastic. You're doing something weird. This sounds like a cult. This is odd. This is getting out of hand, and all this kind of thing. And it really kind of threw us. We had no idea that people wouldn't like it.
Yeah, of what we're up against. And it did go to other locations, out of the state and out of the U.S. And I think right around there is where things really peaked out. Yeah.
So and then this meeting basically comes up, right? So all of this pressure, you're realizing like, wait a minute, not everyone else is on board. We've been talking about revival, but there seems to be a tepid response to that. And then at some point, did you know what the meeting was going to be about before it came down? Like the leaders of a lot of these other bases came to talk to you, right? Or to talk to the leadership here. Right?
Well, right. Again, Butch and I were in Atlantic City, so we weren't as in tune with the center going on here.
Right.
And again, we had been here for years and years and years. We were commissioned out to start a new one.
Yeah.
But we were still in leadership here, in fact.
And I was on the council
on the East Coast.
On the East
Butch
Coast.
was a representative for our centers on the East
Coast.
for the East Coast Council, which is this kind of a collaborative leadership group, and so we're still on leadership, but we're not directly controlling and managing the day in and day out operations of this center. This East Coast group, which Butch was part of, came to talk to this center without telling him.
We actually heard about it through here.
Yeah. And pressured the local leadership here to stop this revival. So once we got whiff of the meeting, we knew what it was about. Mm-hmm. There was enough chatter in the ranks to know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Were there people in the meeting that were in the pro-revival group that were being pressured, or?
Oh yeah, it was the leadership of the Hamilton Center here, besides Butch and I, again, because we were out in Atlantic City, even though we still retained positions of leadership here, we were pioneering this new work. So it was almost fortuitous that we weren't the subject of a direct confrontation. But the ones that were here were confronted.
Yeah.
And this is many years ago, so none of those people are around anymore. But at the time, they were part of the key leaders of the revival that was happening.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so this meeting went on all day, and then it's over, and at some point you hear about what went down in the meeting, right? And so what was, like, did someone call you up, or what did you find out at that point?
Well, we were in Atlantic City, and we got wind of this meeting. So Butch and I came up to the center and spent the day here working on our cars.
Right. All the while knowing something's going down.
Yeah.
Right down there on the pad. Yeah.
So we worked on our cars and kind of just watched, kept our eyes open.
Yeah.
And then after the meeting's over, the director who was here at the time was a friend of ours who was at the center of the revivals, came out of the meeting and told us, what had happened.
Yeah. They were one of the reasons it went on so long is they were trying to, the people who were pro-revival here, witness to these leaders what was going on. So there was 2 or 3 testimonies that were shared, and their life-changing experiences. So that was going on, and they were met with this, the ultimatum. This is all got to stop. You got to stop teaching this. You got to sever relationships with the ministry in Valley Forge. and you have till tomorrow.
So they gave you all. So what was like exactly was the ultimatum? Like you had to do what?
What they told the group, the leadership group here, is that they had to stop this revival.
Like,
But-
how do you stop a
Well,
revival? Like,
Well,
what is it?
of course, they didn't say it like that.
Yeah.
But what they said is you have to stop relating to this outside group. Now, again, who is this outside group? There was a ministry up in Valley Forge that helped, frankly, sparked the revival in our group. They themselves had studied for many years the principles of revival. They were, read a lot of Charles Finney's material, a lot of the revival material, and they understood how to apply those principles, and we gained a relationship with them, and they sponsored conferences which we went to, and they helped us learn how to organize and help people find God, really, and so there's no question about it. It was through their influence that we experienced the spiritual awakening that we had, and the international group recognized that, and so they, from their point of view, the thing to do was to cut off that influence,
Right.
and so the ultimatum was about cutting off that influence. But it also involved splitting the group up.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, we found out later, eventually, what they wanted to do is, if you wanted to stay in with the mission, we were going to be split up and sent to different other locales.
interesting.
Yeah.
Now, as you're saying before, they didn't have the authority to do any of that, right? Like you guys were supposed to be autonomous.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, this is where the conflict starts.
Yeah.
Because we admired various ones as spiritual men and women of God. We sat under teachings. We looked to them as examples of Christian leaders, but as I said, the actual founder of the group, and as it was written into the constitutions and everything, it says that every local center has the legal and financial last word, and
Yeah.
that each. I mean, it was a litany almost that we used to say. Every base is autonomous.
Yeah.
So we, of course, understood. We gave them a lot of. We would give them a lot of deference, give them a lot of respect. But it was understood that we're responsible for our own bills. We're legally responsible for what we do, and we make the final decisions. And the heavy-handed ultimatum that was given kind of violated that,
It was
and that
tough,
just
yeah.
threw everything into a tailspin, and so to go from we feel this is best, or we advise you to do this, to we command you to do this, that just put us in a very awkward
Yeah.
and
And
difficult
again,
position.
it sounds like you didn't even have even 24 hours to
No.
deal with it. They said just the next morning, right after an all-day meeting.
Yes.
That's right.
That you had to just either say. Was it like you had to just say yes or no, or you say?
Well-
was there any kind of threat involved?
Yeah, well, part of what they wanted to do was add people to the board, add other, base directors to the board. That's what there was main concern was. They wanted to populate the board,
Yeah.
which
Right.
is the same as just taking control of the organization.
Right. Yeah.
And we didn't want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was the ultimatum. It was an ultimatum made. You must do this. You must add people to the board. You must
Cut
stop
ties.
this relationship with this other group. And we are going to stop what's happening here because it is not a good thing, and we're going to split you up.
And at this point, you all decided to go up to the ministry at Valley Forge, right?
No.
Oh, no.
So after this long meeting, like it was an all-day meeting, like 8 hours or something like that, a few of us got together and tried to discuss what to do. And it was the ones who were involved in that meeting were exhausted. I remember we actually went out and
We went to-
got cheesecake somewhere.
Yeah,
at
down the road.
diner.
Yeah.
And discussed what to do. And we knew that we couldn't give in to those demands. We knew that wasn't right. And so we said we'll sleep on it. And so we went to bed that night. And the next morning, the director of this center called the group that had come, the leader of that group who had come, who was from another base up in North Jersey, and told him, "Look, this is too quick.
Okay.
We can't make a decision like this on this kind of thing. We need time to pray and talk with the staff and."
And there was a wedding in play.
And there was a wedding happening within just a few days.
Yeah.
And so please, can we just delay this thing, and we'll keep talking about your concerns, but we got to go a little slower here. And they said, no, there is no getting slower. This is now or there's no option. And so at that point we said, there was a local friend who lived in town, and we said, let's gather over there and talk it out with all the staff.
Mhm.
And because there was a lot of pressure here, because there were a number of staff
That were not.
who were not on board, who were disgruntled, and then there were these outside leaders. So we went to this friend's house that was not far from the center here to discuss it, and we really couldn't come up with what to do next. And so we called the other ministry up in Valley Forge, and they said, "Why don't you guys come on up and we'll have a little conference and kind of think and talk it out and figure it out together."
Yeah.
And so we did.
Yeah. Uncle Tim, for around this time for you, what was it like for you? Like what was your awareness of what was going down and like your involvement as those things were transpiring?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, a few things. At the time of the revival, I'd been on staff about 5 years, almost 5 years, or I'd been here almost 5 years, like 4 years on staff, and to me, it was just a wonderful, enlivening time. One where, in my own life, the just a new awareness of my need for Christ. I hadn't seen the extent of wow, Christ is my is indeed my hope, my only hope. And so I saw the so it was a wonderful time. And so during the summer, even there was I was able to share with some of my family and friends. There were some that were attracted. There were some some didn't understand. But there was a just as we talked and shared with more people and were involved with different ministries, you could see it was just this new life that the Lord wanted to bring, to continue to bring to us and to other people. That was definitely a precious thing. It was so I guess so. I was on staff here, working on staff. And not in the leadership, but doing a lot of leadership of property maintenance and so on, in that way. But it was the opposition when it came out in that way. It was kind of a shock to me. The extent even what puzzled me a little bit is like just the lack of honest inquiry. You know, there was, in other words, if like of my family and friends, of different people in ministry that I knew, there was very little honest inquiry. You know, unfortunately, and so that was a bit of an eye opener. You know.
Yeah, like
for me.
no one was like curious or to ask, like, so what happened? You
Yeah.
know, it was just an immediate.
We know this is bad.
This is negative.
Yeah.
It's bad. You know, it was just immediate derangement syndrome.
Yeah, you know. Yeah. I mean, during the summer and early fall, I raised my own support as well, and worked out, you know, kind of side jobs and whatnot, just to turn enough money for my staff fees and everything. And I started losing support, you know, already at that point. And
So the people that you were getting support from had already heard about the
The-
revival and had managed to get a negative impression of it already?
yes, yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
But
unfortunately.
not only that, they were called by the
Well,
there's a group.
not yet. Not
Oh.
before. I don't
Right.
think until
Oh, yeah.
after
Not
the
quite yet,
ultimatum.
yeah.
And,
All right, I
and
get the
siege
timeline
did,
missing, yeah.
Right.
did people
Yeah.
call? So I don't think that happened.
Right,
yet.
yeah,
But there was
not quite yet.
probably a lot of chatter.
Yeah, there was chatter. Some of my family and friends were called, later on.
Yep.
That's right.
How did the people giving you support, where did they get information that would give them a negative understanding of what was going on?
Right. I'm not totally. I can't totally remember. It could be from. I can't totally remember, honestly.
Yeah. It just says somehow it went through the grapevine
Yeah.
and people knew someone else who knows something. Yeah.
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 Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Aunt Betty? What was your? At what point did you start feeling like, oh, something's not going to go well here? There's opposition to this.
Can't remember exactly, but I remember being very excited about what God was doing. You know, I was a young mother struggling. I had 3 little kids and struggling with being very impatient. And I wanted to be a really good mom, but I didn't have victory over certain sins in my life. And the Lord, during the revival, I actually had been seeking the Lord before the revival hit, and just seeking the Lord for, to have new life. And when the revival hit, the Lord showed me, you have a form of godliness, but you deny the power thereof. And he showed me different things. I didn't have love. I didn't even know what love was. And love is patient, love is kind. He showed me very clearly what true love is, and how love doesn't seek its own. And that's what my life was all about. I was seeking my own. It was all about me. Mm-hmm. And that was the Holy Spirit just showed me that clearly, and that God wanted to do something new in my life.
And then
Give
did
me
you start getting a sense from other friends or contacts that they were thinking this real thing that you're experiencing, that they're giving you vibes that, oh, this seems like there's something wrong or bad about that?
I can't remember exactly before this meeting that we've been talking about, but when I heard about the meeting, I was like, oh, okay, this is a bummer. I guess things aren't as rosy as I thought they were,
So it probably was a bit of a
It was a disappointment.
a freight train that after the meeting happened of like, wow, what's
Oh, yeah, a
this is-
total freight train.
Yeah.
Yeah, total.
We did suspect, I have to say, we suspected at some point, because of all the rumblings, that this thing was going to come to a head.
Yeah.
And
I remember a prayer meeting, because we would meet together and do the Methodist bands in
yeah.
Atlantic City, and you and Lisa, Betty, and I, we were talking and sharing one time that because of the rumblings, that there is some opposition coming here, within the ranks.
And you got to remember. I mean, it's just if you haven't lived it, it's really hard to conceive of this thing. But you got to remember this people standing up who you had worked with for years and years and years, and saying, "Look, I just became a Christian."
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't just imagine someone who is very close to you, who you admire as a Christian, standing up and saying, that they really had no victory in their life, and that now they really have found Jesus.
Yes.
That's disrupting, right?
Oh, totally.
But it's also exciting because, like revivals, there's this fresh devotion to Jesus and a love of Him and a desire to serve God with your whole heart. And those who don't really want to make it that, don't go overboard.
Yeah.
That rocks their boat.
It
They
sure
don't
does.
like it.
Yeah.
And so the rumblings sounded a lot of like people who didn't want their boats rocked.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we could sense that this thing is going to come to a head. And to us, it was a call to, put our hands to the plow and not
Yeah,
look back.
right.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
a call to whether are you going to deny God before men, and we it was so the cleansing, the deep thing that happened in our lives was so true and so right and so liberating that there was no way you're going to deny, it, and this is like give your life more and more to Jesus. Devote yourself completely to Him. Love Him with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And then there's this other word. That's overboard.
Yeah.
Stop that. That don't do that.
That's
crazy.
extreme.
That sounds like a cult.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't know. Do you have the same Bible I have?
Yeah.
Like this sounds Bible. So we kind of knew something was going to happen.
Yeah.
You could feel it.
Yeah.
And we were, frankly ready. We had no idea what it was going to be.
No.
But we were frankly ready for it because we know that Christ had won our heart and we're going full blast. I don't
Yeah.
care. This bus is going.
Yeah.
And you want to get off the bus, fine, but we're going.
Yeah.
I think it would be nice to switch out with Uncle Brett and Gretchen, but maybe we want to take a little intermission. Does anybody just take 2 minutes or do? No, I don't know if anyone needs a bathroom break or anything. Okay, yeah. Well, could we have Uncle Brett and Gretchen come up? So maybe let's talk about. So now you're up at the ministry up at Valley Forge, and you meet with them, take counsel with them, and then at some point you come back, and that's when the exciting things start to happen, right? And not in the positive way.
Right. Yeah. So we're up. We went up. They invited us up. We went up. We didn't know. We were just going there for a couple hours or something just to discuss and find out what our strategy is. It turns out that that while we're up there discussing, we get a FedEx
A FedEx package. yeah.
FedEx package that terminates us. So they knew we were up there.
So they sent the package.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Up
so
there.
they knew we were up there. And so they wrote termination letters for everybody, including Butch and I and Betty and Lisa, my wife, who weren't technically a part of this body.
Right.
Although, again, we were still in leadership.
Yeah.
And no one had talked to us. We didn't have any big meeting come and
No,
talk to
no.
us. And we're terminated. Which, first off, let me just say this. We didn't even know what that was.
Right.
We never even heard anyone ever talk like that.
That doesn't go on
Of
in
being
the
terminated.
Yeah.
No, that
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
go on in the mission like that.
So there's I don't remember how many of it, 28 or 30,
Yeah.
33 of us or something. There was something. And so there's this FedEx package comes. It's got all these individual letters in it saying you are now terminated with the international group blank
Yeah,
blank.
yeah.
And you now must turn over all keys and all this stuff. And it's like, wait, first off, we're not a member of that group.
Right.
We're a member of this local ministry.
Right.
We cooperate with this group. We're not a member of that group. And you don't have the authority to say anything about us that
No.
way.
I mean,
Yeah.
wouldn't it be like we just had Chick-fil-A tonight. We usually get Chick-fil-A because of when we do our thing, because we weren't able to get food. The first some of those nights and everything. So wouldn't that be like the Chick-fil-A owner for the franchise, a few counties over, comes over to one of the Chick-fil-A's here and says to the staff there, "Oh, you're all fired."
Well,
Right,
I think the international group would think of it this way. They're Chick-fil-A, and all the Chick-fil-A's are franchises.
Yeah.
And they have the authority to cancel a franchise.
Right.
I think that's how they would think of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Of course, this played out in the courts, and of course it was not that at all.
Yep.
And like I said, it was just very well known that every base was autonomous.
Legally
and financially,
Legally
these are the actual
autonomous.
words, had the last word. So none of us, that way of thinking was not there. No one
No.
thought about it. In fact, we had many discussions over the years about if a local base wanted to do something that the rest of the group didn't feel that they would want them to, that they still had the right to do it.
Mhm.
And there were examples, actually. There were actually one group started a bank.
Yep.
Oh.
And they were told by the other ministries that they didn't think that was the best idea, but they did it anyways.
Mm.
So we had examples of it,
Yeah.
and although we collaborated together, we labored together under the same banner. There's no question about that, and we saw ourselves as a fraternity, a brotherhood. We were together as one. But we understood, and the way this organization grew so radically fast was because of autonomy.
Right.
Yep.
And so you can't have it both ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? You can't say you're hierarchical and then
After you've
and then
had all the
everyone
benefits, yeah.
invests their own money and their own energy to
Yeah.
create their own, these ministries,
yeah.
these local ministries. You can't have it both ways, and that's what they ended up trying to do. Anyways, so we get these termination letters, and we realize the gig is up. So we had more meetings. Eventually, we decided, look, we got to go back to the center and deal with this situation. And that's when we approached this. We drove in, came to the center, drove into, and they were barricading the driveway.
Yep.
Now, Uncle Brett and Gretchen, forgive me. Were you married? You were not married then, right?
No,
Yeah.
married
I
at
was
the time.
19.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Have your mics up.
Yep.
And when did you get your termination letters? Were you up at the
They got it
ministry
at the
at
same time.
Same time.
Valley Forge
Yeah.
at the same
We
time?
all
Yeah,
got them
yeah.
at the same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So what were you thinking? Like, what was your reaction to that?
Well, kind of like when Adam was just sharing, like, in my mind, that exposed the narrative that they were trying to push in one sense. It's like, I'm not an employee. How can I be terminated? This was a voluntary, paid staff, however we want to put it. But because I understood it as self-autonomous, it said it right there in the brochure when I came in, autonomous being. So, in fact, later on in one of the situations, they tried to change the name nomenclature. They referred to one guy as a bishop. And that was never happened before.
Right.
And they're trying to push the hierarchy thing. So where did that come from? so it was very clear in my mind, and I understood it one way, but in fact, I even think the word excommunication came out somewhere. It might have been in one of the letters or something. So I was like, where did, that's like the Catholic Church, so it was really odd. When I saw it, I said, how I just became on staff, how can I get terminated? It didn't make sense to me either.
Yeah, it was very bizarre, just how everything happened. I mean, I was just like Brett. We were in the same school. We came onto staff. I had just come onto staff when revival broke out, and the behavior when things started becoming after this meeting just kept going, becoming more and more bizarre. And yeah. So to be terminated, it didn't make sense to me. I just felt more like, to me, like this is something that the enemy wants to use to stop what God's doing.
Yeah.
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 So when you come back, you said the driveway was blocked.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It was blocked.
What was that?
There were people standing across there. I forgot if they had parked a car there or not, but they had
So they were
lined up.
anticipating your return.
Yeah,
Yeah.
someone tipped them off.
Up
We were
the
on.
run.
We were coming.
Yeah.
They actually tried to pretend that the Lord told them that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but I
Oh,
think
yeah.
later on we found
Oh,
out
yeah.
how they found out.
Yeah.
So they were tipped off, but that wasn't atypical of the
Yeah.
Yeah.
modus operandi.
No.
The Lord
no.
Jesus
in
told
very,
us.
very
Yeah,
human
okay.
ways.
I
yeah.
think the red dress.
So they were all having a prayer meeting. That's
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
yeah. But it was blocking the driveway.
Yeah.
So we just parked our cars on the street and just walked onto the property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had split rail fences at that time up there, so we just climbed over and through and walked right on.
Now
Yeah.
they had, unbeknownst to us, had gone into all the apartments, people's personal apartments, actually had taken people's diaries
Holy cow.
and documents
Yep.
and some assets even got taken.
Yep.
And so when we came in, they didn't expect us. I think
Oh,
they
no.
thought that blocking the driveway was going to do the work, and we just went in, and they took us by surprise, and then we went into the apartments. Now again, Butch and I, Betty and Lisa, we lived down in Atlantic City, but the rest of the staff, had apartments
It's here.
and so we all went into the apartments, and they, like I said, they had already been invaded, but they had left them, but they did take things. So we went into the apartments, and that really is the beginning of the standoff, and that's why we call it a siege, because they had taken control of the property, and we were besieged, or in our apartments, these apartments.
This almost sounds like sort of like a squatter's play, where the hope is just if you abandon just
Yeah.
being at the property, then it can kind of
And
default
that was
to
the
them.
accusation that we had abandoned the property.
Yes,
It was
that came-
ridiculous.
I
We
mean,
were
you
only
left for like a day or two?
Well, I
3
think
days
it
or
might have
something?
been 2 days.
Yeah.
and everybody left their personal
Yeah, you
belongings
lived
there and stuff.
so-
yeah.
and not only that, we had also left the couple that
Yes.
was going to be married.
Yeah.
Right.
There to make sure they ran the office and
Right.
ran the property.
Right.
Yep.
And that's how we knew they took over. By the way, because they called us.
Mhm.
So there was no abandoning, but they occupied all the other public spaces
Yeah.
and other empty apartments and things like that, and they called out. They called in. They made a worldwide. It's literally a worldwide call for reinforcements.
Right.
And so people came from about the four corners
Corners
of the earth.
And the call letter was to come and occupy.
And to occupy.
That was their spiritual
Specifically
word.
said that.
What
Yeah.
And we know that, and later on we can tell you how we know it.
Yes, I want to get into that. So
In fact, Tim, while they did that, they had a spiritual warfare conference back here.
That was the guys.
That was the guys. They called it
So
spiritual
we're just going to have a spiritual warfare conference, and that's
Yes.
when they invited everyone.
Exactly.
That was the
parents
guys.
and everybody. They called my parents.
So,
They called her-
let's talk about how how you got into being able to know their communications. 'Cause you were able to have some insight into what was going on in their side
It's like
of
Hogan's
things,
Heroes.
right?
Yes, we did. This was part of one of the more unexpected things that we ended up learning. But at that time, this is of course the late '80s, right? There's no internet. There is internet. It was
Right.
ARPANET at the time. It was a military thing, but it just started to computers just started to get on the scene, right? And there was there were messaging networks that that very few organizations were a part of. But anyways, our mission started to have one of these information networks, and it was you used your computer to dial up this network, and it was a bulletin board system. Anyways, the base here had access to that system, and our base in Atlantic City had access to that system. Once the siege happened, they shut down the connection for this base to that network's built bulletin board system. They forgot to shut down the Atlantic City one, so we had access to it still, and so we were reading all the public messages about what they're doing, what they're trying to do, which I still have all that, and so that's how we knew what they were doing.
So what were they saying was going on here, and when they were calling for people to come? Like, what was the narrative?
This group from Valley Forge has deceived all the leaders and the board members, and has taken over control of the local ministry, and they're a deception group that invades and takes over local groups, and so we need to get there and make sure that they don't steal that base from us. Stuff like that.
Yep.
Gotcha. Right. That's not to say that there is no stealing of the base. They're all separate, right, and autonomous. Yeah. I mean,
But even the idea of it was absurd.
yeah. I suppose perhaps the most steel manning you can do is perhaps they were concerned that, if something bad was going on, then it's going to tarnish the name of the organization as a whole, perhaps.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
honestly, I understand that. You know what I mean? If you think something like some kind of spiritual abuse is going on, or some kind of cult-like practices, or some kind of Jim Jones situation, that'd make you afraid as a group. I could understand that. And you would want to do what you could to rescue the young people and all that. Okay, I get that. Okay, I'm not going to criticize that, but they know us.
Right.
They know who we are. We have this long-term years.
Yeah. Right.
I'd been in the ministry 9 years at this point, and Butch had been like 11 or 12 years. So that we were personal friends, and we had invited discussion and address every concern and so forth. There was paranoia was at work here.
Yeah.
In fact, I called someone who we thought in the international organization. Hey, can we come and talk? With the right people.
Yeah, we solicited.
We solicited.
We wanted meetings so that we could sort out and address problems, and those were denied.
They were denied and railroaded.
Did you solicit those? Was this before?
After we came back.
After you came back.
Yep.
So you were actually asking, can we just talk about this more?
We were.
We didn't want it to escalate.
No. In fact, we were. The thought in our minds was, look, one of the things we teach on was relationships and how to, how do you reconciliation and so on. And we thought that it would be on that page, but I think that was the other one, Sheila, how that was always rebuffed, and it was always this strong arm, thing.
I think just hearing you talk about it just helps me understand why you talk about how revival has this effect where people see a change, and then they see a change in you, and that somehow seems to reflect back on them, and they think you're almost accusing them or saying something of them because they're kicking against the goads, right? They're feeling those pricks, and they don't want to do something about it. And I especially in this age of non-judgmentalism, that can seem like, wow, that seems like maybe too quick to jump to that conclusion.
Right.
You know, you can't really know. But when you see just the irrationality of the approach to what was going
Yes.
on, that's the only conclusion that you can come to, I think, is that there's some kind of spiritual battle going on
Yes.
here, more than just, it's not just a lack, you know, it wasn't just a miscommunication.
No, no.
No, I think that's true, and I think even in modern day politics, you can kind of see the same thing. That there comes a point where it's the opposition becomes irrational, and that's kind of what we were experiencing, and it is spiritual. There is a spiritual thing that's going on, and the thing that you discover, though, and this is the thing that shocked us, was that basically the end result of all this opposition was, don't get too excited about God.
Yeah.
Yeah, just it's okay to, you know.
There's limits.
Be mildly enthusiastic about it. But don't go all in.
It needs to have some decorum or something.
Right,
I don't
right,
know.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
not that we were doing anything, you know, outlandish or anything, but like Butch said, the one leader said, "Look, I took Finney's books and I stuck them in my trunk of my car and never." Why? Because he was freaked out by the revival. So, look, a lot of people don't. Finney is a divisive character, right, in the 19th century, but the fact is, the Second Great Awakening was basically saved the United States from moral degradation. It lifted the country up, and it's a fact. I mean, this is already a documented fact that the converts from Finney's revivals had a 90% continuance rate. That meant like 10 years after the revival, they were still following Christ. Whereas Moody was only a 30%.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the modern
Modern
evangelist is 1/2 of 1%.
Yeah.
10 years from now.
Yeah.
So he knew something, and it happened, and the revivals were real, and his material centers on personal responsibility, and the truth is we as a country experienced a Finney-like revival in the 70s and 80s, and it was through the musician Keith Green.
Yeah.
Keith Green's ministry, Last Days Ministries, was really a powerhouse because of the material of Finney's writings.
Yeah.
They put out tracts about it. I've been in contact with some of the founders of Last Days, and so I'm intimately familiar with how it came about. Of course, Melody Green has written a book about it herself, and so it's right there in the book. So some of those same principles of total commitment to Christ, repentance, free will, those principles lead to a revival.
Right.
And what we were being taught through being demonstrated by this opposition was, look, religion is something you have to, look, we all believe it, but don't get too excited.
Yeah.
Don't live it with integrity.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
There's still the American dream,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was just, if I can interject here, when I just came on staff, there was a East Coast staff conference. We went there, and there was a major leader within the movement who got up and spoke, and he was almost considered prophetic. And he said at that moment, I think we need revival. Revival needs to be in this mission, but I'm afraid we're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, remember that.
And I sat there, and this was in February, before everything went down. So when I heard that and I saw what happened, somehow he saw the tenor of what would happen. So in one sense, I could almost not be surprised what happened, because I didn't have the long-lasting relationships and stuff. But so when it started to happen, I could see, wow, that's just what he said. And it came out that way. I was like, so it wasn't when revival began to take place, which needed to happen, it was prophetic, exactly what happened. And so I remember that distinctly. And then I don't remember the reaction of the crowd. I kind of wish I had taken note of that. But I just remember that very clearly.
Yep.
You know, when that happened.
So there a few babies started being thrown out with bathwater at this juncture where there's some altercations that happened, right? Let's briefly like go over a few of what because this started to become more than just a differences of opinion. There was, I was looking through the transcripts and everything. There was an altercation on October 9th with two gentlemen with someone from who I guess had come in trying to break down the door. Do you know anything about that?
So yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah, of course you do. But I mean, tell me more about that.
Still have the bumps right here.
Secondhand,
Yeah,
is it?
So yeah, okay. So the setup is, you know, we come back onto the property. It turns into this Cold War kind of idea. You know, we're in these apartments. They bringing in, you know, dozens and dozens of outside staff members from all over the world, and they're patrolling the property. They're surrounding the buildings. They, you know, we you know, famously say they started a bonfire at night out there, and it
Felt
you
like
know,
How many,
you know,
was that just one night that they did this
yeah,
bonfire?
I think it was one
Or was
night, maybe. It might have been more than one. I don't remember.
In fact, there was a night where there was a bunch of students here at the time, and they shipped them all off to this place. And once the students were gone, it was almost like the air even changed more drastic. And that's when the
something
bonfire came up.
So
and
you were all living here.
Yes.
Were they living
Yes.
on
They
the
were
property?
camping
too.
out
Yep.
in other
So
places.
like they were occupying one building and you were
well, they were occupying 3 buildings.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were, and there was the one building where all the apartments were, also had the offices. So they had control of the offices. We had control of our apartments, and so they, you know, and they had the other buildings, and the dining and the kitchen and all that, and so they were, you know, in the style of the missionaries. Everyone's rolling out their sleeping bags, sleeping on the floors, and just you know, occupying this entire property, and patrolling it, and you know, they set up speakers and sang songs, you know, worship songs and battle songs, and you know, trying to blast us and all this, and. In the meantime, you know, we got to go out for pizza, and you know, we're just trying to eat and function and so forth. And some of our people even had outside jobs. They, you know, would have to go off the property. And one of our people, they prevented from leaving the property. You know, and that almost became an altercation. And finally, they let them go.
Would they like tried to block the car?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
prevented them
Yeah.
physically from leaving the property.
Oh my.
And
Why that person in particular?
I think he
Just-
was the
just
first
the-
one to
the-
try.
Yeah.
They did, you know, you had there's all these young people, you know, idealistic.
Not a lot of wisdom necessarily being in play.
You know, and these older leaders who really should know better, you know, kind of unleashing the
youthful
youth
energy.
zeal,
Yeah.
in unwise ways.
Mm.
And so it's a standoff, right? And so eventually we start writing letters to each other. You know, we're writing letters to the group. You know, we would type up letters and say we request a meeting with certain leaders. We would hand deliver it. They would write, and then we'd hand deliver it back to us. And so there was this dialogue going on through letters, and you know, demands being made, and so on and so forth. And it was basically it came to an impasse.
Yeah.
And like Butch had mentioned, that we had requested these meetings, and they were saying no, and basically it was, you know, toe the line, or you know, there's nothing more to say, and so eventually they got, you know, weary of waiting, and so they forced their way into the apartments physically.
Yep.
And so what was their goal in forcing their way in? Was it to force you out, essentially?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it was to intimidate us out. Yep.
Probably whoever was doing that probably wasn't like. I'm just imagining what they were thinking. Like they're gonna grab you and drag you out, or
Well, you remember we had access to the electronic billboard.
yes, yeah. So
So
Occupy.
they busted the doors down and forcibly entered. Brett and I were at the front door of the one apartment, and they had a ruse or something to knock on the door or
Yeah.
something, and so we opened it up, and then they
We
started
slammed it open.
pushing, they've a bunch of them, applied pressure and tried to force the door open, and Brett and I were kind of holding the door back, and there was a point when that was happening where we actually started to make progress to be able to shut the door, and they went, oh, like we're doing something violent, and that weakened Brett and I.
Yep.
That weakened us.
Brother
We were
and
like,
brother.
oh, we're not trying to hurt, and then boom, they
Yeah,
smashed it
yeah,
open, and
right.
everyone ran in, and they threw me to the ground, and
Just ran right over me.
and then ran upstairs into the one apartment, which Mom was up there with you in her arm,
I don't remember.
Yeah, you were really
Apparently I was
small.
there.
and they were like, we're taking over basically, and Mom called the police.
Yeah.
So okay. So that if the police had not been called, possibly more things might have happened.
Yeah, that would have been, and that would have been the end game for them.
Yeah.
But the police came and kicked them out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to show the irrationality of it, they came up, and Lisa was in the room there. They all sit down and say, let's have a prayer meeting. Let's
Yes.
pray for you guys. And then another guy walks up, oh, Brett, remember, we've done some things wrong. I was like, something, all I see out there is the arm of flesh. And it's just, it was just like,
Yeah. It was
I was like,
Well, there was
wow,
that one-
they're running over us, and let's pray. I was just
Wasn't
like,
that one
I
time
could,
where-
it was just like, I said, I couldn't take it. I just, okay, you go pray, go for it, go for it. I was just like, okay.
Just to add to that, there was one time where someone invited you to come out and play volleyball with them.
Yes.
Yeah, in the middle of all of this.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that reminds me.
The pizza?
Yeah, so before the break-in,
Yeah.
before the break-in, there was this standoff going on. So they, they were trying to use all their little spiritual techniques on us, and one of the they would say things like, "Oh, let us watch your children so you guys can go take a break," or something like that. We're like, what, are you crazy? Like you're sieging us. You're taking over the property. We're gonna trust you to watch our children while it's insane.
Yeah.
And then they did another thing where they bought some pizzas and left it at our door. We just want to buy you some pizzas.
Right.
And the neighbor's dog came over and went and grabbed it and ate it. It was like, this is
symbolic.
absurd. What are you guys, But, we had to conduct schooling with our kids, because we were like homeschooled, right? So we this day on and day off is going on, with this standoff. So we're conducting schools in the apartments, and and they're saying things like, we hope the kids drive them nuts so they come out of there. And, and then they also invited local pastors to come and try to talk us out of, being in the apartments and stuff.
Yeah.
It was crazy. And then when all that didn't work, they attempted the bust in, and the police had to intervene and tell him to leave.
Yep.
But the police didn't tell him to leave the property. That was the thing. They told him to leave the apartments,
Yep.
which they had to comply to that.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, there was also a brandishing of a shotgun, I believe, as well, right?
Yeah.
Yes, which was very foolish.
Yeah. So they after the break-in, again, like I told you, we had access to the bulletin board system. They said something on there. Look, they gave a report of what happened and the police coming and all that. And they said this. They said, we had the word it was something like the the Lord told us to occupy.
Yep.
But that means not go in though, or something. They like kind of
Yeah.
adjusted the word so that it didn't mean to. It wasn't,
Yeah.
It's God's will anyways that
Yeah.
the police told them to get out,
Right.
somehow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyways.
The Lord moves in mysterious ways.
So eventually they invite former staff member, local Christians, pastors to this a dinner that they held on the property.
Yep.
And it was to raise funds, I guess, for this
For the next step.
for the next step, and so we had been in touch with our attorney, and he said, well, make sure you just take note of. Now this must have been after
Was it?
legal papers or something. I can't remember.
Was
what
it just
happened
before the TRO
there.
hearing?
It must have been.
Oh, it was just before the
just
TRO.
before the temporary restraining order. But I'm trying to remember why we were in touch with the attorney then.
Because didn't they serve us papers?
They must have served us.
for the TRO.
That's right. They must have
Yeah.
served us
Because they initiated it after all
court
this failed.
papers. That's what happened. So the break-in didn't happen. They served us court papers, and we had to go get an attorney.
Yep.
And then so the attorney, we're preparing for the court hearing, and then they have this dinner, and so we tell the attorney, hey, they're having this dinner, and he tells us, well, what, don't do anything, just watch and observe. So we sat in one of the cars and just watched the people who came, and one of the people who came was staff from this other base, and they pulled up in their car, got out, and they waved to us, and went in their trunk, pulled out a shotgun, and cocked it in front of us, and then put it in the car, and then went on to the meeting. So
And that came out in the hearing
yeah,
later.
that ended up in the hearing, of course.
Wow.
So, and they tried to deny it later,
Yes.
there was actually a neighbor visiting who observed it too. So, we had a corroborating witness.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I mean, incidents like that, these physical altercations. This isn't. I mean, you're probably feeling like this could result in me serious bodily injury or a loss of life, possibly.
Yeah.
Which is shocking to say. I mean, I think I've heard you say before that you felt like, you were grateful for the legal system and apparatus of society around you, because if those barriers weren't in place, there's no telling how far it could have gone.
I think that's right, and legally, it turns out that it was the secular government, the secular law, that prevented them from abusing us.
Yeah.
And if that hadn't been in place, I'm sure they would have used whatever method they needed to expel us.
Yeah. The irony, we've talked about this often over the years, is you get the idea. Force had been used time and time again, and that didn't work, and so now they were trying the legal lever. They're the ones that initiated the legal thing.
Yeah, we that would never even have crossed our mind.
They misrepresented themselves in court and are asking for a TRO to boot us off because we didn't belong there, and that ended up being our salvation.
Yeah.
So this is how the siege came to an end, then, right?
That's right. Yeah. So they eventually, we had to show up for the court appearance for the that to respond to the papers they served us, which was, like Butch said, a temporary restraining order. And that restraining order was kicking us off the property. So we went to the hearing, and the judge heard the facts of the case, and he gave a temporary restraining order against them.
He
Yeah.
flipped it. Yeah.
So, so you guys didn't do.
He
I mean,
flipped the TRO.
You were just hunkered down. This could have kept going and going for a long time. It comes to an end because they try to kick you out, and the judge instead says,
You're
"Actually, you guys are wrong. You guys are the ones who should be out of here."
Yep, that's exactly what
She's
happened.
right, yeah.
What were you thinking of trying to anything like during this time? Were you thinking we just have to keep putting up with this until it changes, or what? Were you praying and saying, "Lord,
There was
please"?
a lot of
We
prayers.
had
Did
no.
something stop it.
Yeah.
We were, first off, we were in our 20s.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
And step by step praying.
we had no
and taking
idea
it.
what this was about. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, like what? We haven't been trained for
So-
this. What are you supposed to do?
And we're befuddled. These are people we used to respect.
Yeah.
We are assuming they would operate on another set of principles. And our eyes are getting slowly more and more open, like Brett has expressed. Oh, you really are that ilk. You'll use force. You'll use hypocrisy. You'll use the courts to get your way, you know. And that's part of our salvation as a group. You know, what Adam was mentioning earlier about loving God totally, you know, with all your heart. There's no middling way in that. It's all or nothing. And so I think that's part of the spiritual battle that was in place here. And it's being unmasked in front of our eyes, you know, what we were dealing with. If that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
So in more ways than one, the court and the whole experience is our salvation.
Wow.
It's our passage through the Red Sea.
Yeah.
Kadesh.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories. I mean, we could spend
we
many
could go several nights
hours
on
Yes.
going through this, and honestly, it's hard to this is going on. This is 1989, so
Right.
It's getting
99
farther.
to
this
the
is a
right.
long time
Yeah.
ago now,
Yeah.
and
It's been a 40.
a lot of water has gone over the dam. So it's hard to convey it, but it was kind of our crossing of the Red Sea experience, and it's what ultimately led to the birth of our community.
Yeah.
Right.
How how long from you come back to the driveway and it's blocked, you have to park on the road and come back to your apartments and try to maintain some kind of life while this is all happening, to the court order happening and them being told to leave the property? Like how many weeks was that?
It was over a month.
Yeah.
Like
Wow.
almost a month and a half.
Yeah, when we got back finally, it was Thanksgiving. In fact, we had a big Thanksgiving dinner here.
And there was even a wedding that happened during that time too,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of
So,
disruption.
well,
with
the
that.
wedding never happened
No.
because of the siege.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
So,
yeah.
in fact, there were this couple that were here. They were going to be married that weekend, and their family was flying in. Some of them were in the air, and they were prevented from having their wedding, and it was a disaster and a fiasco for them. I forever feel bad about that, and so they basically had to call it off.
I feel like if you're on the side that's preventing a wedding from happening, you're probably on the wrong side. I mean, just let the wedding happen.
The truth of the matter is that if the international group would have just been reasonable, nothing would have happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they issued an ultimatum and applied so much pressure, it forced us back into a corner.
Yeah.
And this is what
Yeah.
the result has been. If they would have just listened and dialogued, things would have really resolve themselves, all the problems that they perceived. And
You just would have been that quirky
would have been
group
happy.
that's,
Yeah.
oh, there's that one that's doing common purse over there.
well, no, we
You know,
didn't
you
have
even
that.
have
We
common
didn't have
purse.
that.
No, we didn't have any
Right.
of that
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that wasn't even on our radar. You
No.
know, we were just happy about revival.
Yeah.
We would have just continued with the mission as is.
Mm.
Yeah.
We had no ideas of changing anything.
Yeah.
But the heavy-handed tactics precipitated a breakaway, basically.
Yep.
Do you think if they didn't have those heavy-handed tactics, I mean, it's hard to play,
What if?
what if?
Yeah.
But did that help steel your resolve and push you, you think, more fully aligned with the path that God was calling for our group?
Well, I think so. What do
I-
you guys think?
Yeah, if anything, it just confirmed in my mind more the spiritual battle and what God was asking us to do. Because we're seeing such irrational things, is that there's something more to this. It's not just two people with a disagreement. It goes a lot deeper. So, in fact, I can harken back to your early discussion. I can remember being here when things were beginning to happen, and you could feel the camp dividing. It became really palpable, and things were happening. In fact, one day, right before the ultimatum, the current base leader called me up into the apartment and said, "Brett, something's going down. Basically, where are you? How are you going to stand?" And at my point, it's like, I don't care what we call ourselves. I want to follow God. I want us to follow God. Whatever the case may be, because it was coming to that. The lines were being drawn,
Yeah.
and it was so thick because you could see it happen.
Yeah.
And then I didn't know what that would mean and how it would look, but I said, my stake's here.
Mhm.
And that's what it meant. And that's really what Adam said, birthed our community,
Mhm.
in that idea. So I'll just, it was, like you said, unless you've lived through it, it's hard to explain.
Yeah.
It really is. But that was the nature of it, yeah.
Yeah, so like I said before, it was like we had all the bizarre behavior. So you come from having revival and wanting to follow Jesus, and for myself, it was even like being committed to his people. That was like a new thing that was being born in my thinking, that you're not just following God. You're not, it meant it was a broader vision to follow his people. And so for me, I was excited about that. I was excited to hear all the things that, how revival was going to these different places. And so just all of the bizarre things that were happening, and it was just a bunch of lies. There were a bunch of lies that were being spread about what was happening here. And you could, it was just obvious that it was the devil,
Yeah.
trying to stop God's work. And so from my perspective, I was like, I don't know about all that. I just know that I want to follow God, and I really want to be with his people, and I want to do his work. And so I don't know. I think it pushed me further that way.
Yeah.
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 It'd be nice to cap off with talking a little bit about the reconciliation that we had too. Like what there's so much that we could talk about with the court case and all of those things, and the all those things that became a pressure cooker to form us into the structures that we are today. We'll maybe have to do that next year. But maybe just talk about what efforts we had with trying to reconcile with the international group.
Yeah, so of course, we had this siege. We had eventually it resulted in a temporary restraining order, and then that began a multi-year court battle, which, like as you said, is a story in and of itself. And that finally resolved in our favor after several appeals. So we won the initial court case. Again, this is a David and Goliath kind of story, by the way, too, where we were we represented ourselves at one point, because legal fees are expensive.
Yeah.
And we won a trial against a top one of the top law firms in the country
Yeah.
that they employed, and we ended up winning that trial, representing ourselves. We were pro se.
Mm-hmm.
It's really a miracle. Then there was an appeal on that. At that point, we had to have an attorney because it was no longer us as individuals on trial; it was the corporation on trial. And then there was that went to an appeal court. We won that. Then that went to the New Jersey Supreme Court, and we won. They wouldn't take that case,
Yeah.
so in effect, we win that. And it was heading to the United States Supreme Court as well. But there was at that point they were willing to call it quits. So that went on for multiple years, and so we had won all those. A few years went by after that, and we met another ministry that had contacts with the international group, and who we had some contacts
Yeah.
with. So there was this kind of intersection of
Yep.
relationships. And we appealed to them. We initiated. We appealed to them and said, could you help us reconcile with the international group? And they agreed to that. And so a number of meetings were set up where we started to air out our grievances with one another. And it really looked, it was very hopeful that there was going to be a reconciliation. And several meetings happened. And there was a first stage reconciliation that happened where we forgave each other and admitted some wrongs, and we were going to go on to the next stage, and this third party had instructed both us and the international group to write a letter praising each other and admitting where we were wrong, and we were on board with that, but they wouldn't do it. They couldn't bring themselves to do it.
Yeah.
And so that was the end of the reconciliation.
Yeah.
And fortunately, there was a third party watching this, so it's not just our testimony.
Yeah.
Someone outside of us saw and witnessed that we tried our best. As much as be in you is, be at peace with all men. And we tried that. And that's where it stands now. There's kind of we'll ignore you and you can ignore us.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, that was really wonderful. Thank you for all those stories. It's really an honor to have grown up in this group with all of the life. You've given your all to following Christ, and that's been made manifest in who we are and the life we have together. And I'm just grateful and thank you for staying strong during the siege and following Christ no matter where it took you.
Yes.
But
Amen.
thank you, everybody, and have a great night.